We've got a great group of folks here representing a bunch of different sides of this whole world of buying both television and online video. Certainly a very topical, timely topic at the moment with the upfronts going on, the new fronts just having been completed. And a lot of people think about this topic of how do you bring together these worlds of traditional television and online to achieve the kind of communication and advertising goals that you have. Still very new territory, still a lot of things to be worked out in terms of both measurements, technologies, processes. So that's what we're going to explore today in our discussion here. And basically what I will do, we have a few topics we're going to kick things off with that I'll direct to one of the panelists to start off with some thoughts. And then we'll all chime in and then hopefully hear from you on your thoughts and your questions as well. We'll certainly have time for questions at the end as well, but I think if we make this more interactive as we're kicking around one of these topics, feel free to raise your hand. I don't see any microphones in here, so you can just shout out your comment or question. We'll incorporate that into the discussion. And I will let each speaker introduce yourselves when I hand the ball off to you. And I think one of the most important things, and one of the other sessions I was in this morning, talked a lot about the whole world of measurement and the world of GRPs and how we're actually going to transact on the inventory on these different kinds of platforms and things. So I'm going to have Jed kick us off with a discussion about, now that we've got OCR from Nielsen and VCE from ComScore, this gives us a common kind of metric across online and TV in order to plan and to transact these campaigns. But then, of course, a lot of viewing is shifting to mobile where we aren't covered. So that, just as we thought we were getting things together and had a good common currency, now we're still got kind of a gap. Nielsen has announced the mobile piece of this will be available in the fall, but we've all got to do our planning right now. So Jed, share your perspectives here. First a little intro about you and Analect, and then tell us a little bit about your perspective on the metrics and where mobile is heading and how that's going to evolve in the next few months.
Great, thanks, Jim. I'm Jed Meyer. I'm the research director at Analect. We're the data, technology, and analytics part of Omnicom Media Group. And so I think this is fascinating sort of territory because we've had a mandate from a while ago from Paige Thompson, who runs Omnicom Media Group, to really do a deep dive from a research perspective into online video and what's going on with online video and who are the types of audiences that are really engaging with online video and where are the eyeballs going, if you will. Is there feedback on that, or is this just me? So we've been looking at this for quite a while from a research perspective and from a planning and a buying perspective as well. I think it's great that we've got OCR and VCE, and those are relatively new tools. They've only been out for a couple of years. And they're still being sort of woven into the fabric of how people plan and buy accounts. The other tool that I'd sort of mention is fusion tools that are around that help us plan and help us move money around between TV and online video, or traditional video and online video. One thing, and Jim, we talked about this a little bit at lunch, was GRPs are just one metric that you can look at. And from a planning and execution perspective, it's not the be-all, end-all. And so whenever I have dialogue with our account teams and with our clients, some clients love it because they want to put everything into that framework of a GRP, a gross rating point, and really use that as a comparable metric between different types of media. But other accounts say, hey, I've got different KPIs and I want to look at something else beyond just a GRP. And so the measurement framework has to be flexible enough to account for that. I'd also say that adoption of OCR and VCE are still in the early stages. So some accounts are using it really broadly, and other accounts are using it less broadly, whether it's because it's a financial issue or they're just not ready or they're not spending enough money in that area. So there's lots of reasons why OCR and VCE aren't on every buy today. From a mobile perspective, Jim, to your question, I think it's terrific that there will be extensions of both OCR and VCE into the mobile space. As you mentioned, it's not going to be out till the fall. The trickiest piece of that from a measurement point of view is most of those require cooperation from the publisher to encode with either a Nielsen tag or a ComScore tag, and that's going to be tricky. I think some of the traditional media companies like your CBSs and your Turners and ABC are going to do that kind of encoding because they're used to it, but the digital publishers may or may not move that quickly in that space, and so that's an important thing to sort of keep an eye on. And I also think the other thing about that makes it complicated is it touches into all the workflow that these guys have in terms of running mobile campaigns, and having that extra step of having to put in the VCE or the OCR tag is another piece of the process, which I think will take a while to sort of get built in there.
Great. Alec, what are you seeing from your clients about how they're using these kind of metrics, or as Jed mentioned,
Sure.
sort of other kind of metrics that they can use as well?
Well, I mean, in particular, hi, I'm Alex Schleider with Videology. I manage data and analytics for the company, and we're a technology service provider that supports agencies and advertisers with their video spends across the ecosystem, using data and research and analytics to really show the performance of how digital video works in conjunction with TV. So OCR and VCE are an important part of helping brand advertisers become more comfortable with taking television budgets and moving it to digital, or combining the two together and starting to figure out how to plan cross-channel. The common currency that Nielsen is providing for this cross-channel, utilizing OCR and their XCR solutions, is really helping advertisers recognize that they really shouldn't be planning in a silo anymore, because of the fact that it is such a measurable aspect to how they can run a campaign today. They're seeing the differences that exist in the world when it comes to planning cross-channel and measuring cross-channel and targeting cross-channel. So OCR has been a very important aspect to helping brand advertisers, specifically who always have been comfortable with GRPs and running demo targeting on the TV side, to shift into digital. And as they shift into digital, they start to understand how they can use different data sets and measurement solutions to even become more comfortable with the fact of digital video is everywhere, video is here. It's not just about TV and PC and mobile. It really is understanding how to work holistically across all the devices and channels.
Yeah. So Mike, from the initiative perspective, what is the view?
Well, from hi, I'm Mike Sigentheller. I lead our content innovation practice at Initiative. Given the topic of the conversation, I'm the resident fish out of water. But do take it from a different perspective. If you look at working with our clients to diversify and diversify how ads are run, sort of extracting larger budgets from television and getting folks to diversify, obviously key. And from a mobile perspective, I tend to look at it as, ads are first. My open question is with, social media and marketers being really essentially editors and creating content, sort of what's that next step beyond advertising to serve relevant content to folks that is generated by brands?
Jim, I'm going to jump in. The other thing that I think comes up a lot from our dialogue with clients is the comfort in terms of spending money in online video around brand safety. And so that's actually the biggest sort of step, is getting them comfortable that we're going to invest their money in a channel, in an area where they can have confidence. And so that's almost, even as much as the measurement issue, that's a big barrier in terms of making sure that people know that, they're not going to run next to something objectionable, or there could be a conflict in terms of the other advertisers in the sort of, not a pod, but in the, in that stream or that space. And that, now there's more technology, so we're using a company called Integral Ad Solutions to help deliver ads in a more brand safe environment, but that's a really important step for getting advertisers comfortable, because if they don't have that comfort, it doesn't matter how good the measurement is. If they still have that fear that it's going to run on something objectionable, or next to, I'm Ford and he's Chevy, we don't want to run right next to each other. There's all sorts of issues around brand safety and placement.
Right. The other thing I'm curious about is, particularly with the mobile world, and again, the session I was at this morning, it seems to be a big shift toward mobile. How does that affect how you plan and build campaigns? Because obviously with mobile, you're not going to be sitting there saying, well, it's Thursday at 7 o'clock, that's what's going to happen, and so I can build out my nice media flow chart and see exactly what's happening in my campaign. And Alec, maybe
Well, I mean,
you
I
guys,
think-
I'm sure, can
Yeah, I
comment
mean,
on that.
in the world of digital, buying against the time and against content, that's you can buy against content for, with the broadcasters and the fact that they're bringing their content into a digital environment. But more so in the world of digital, it is really about the audiences and brand safety, right? So
Yep.
lots of change. First, it was audience targeting, right? And then there was audience targeting with not a lot of brand safety aspects in play for video. And then OCR came out, and it was about recognizing that the ability to measure how the verification of the audience that you're targeting. And now the brand safety tools are coming out, and viewability and making sure that there's no bot traffic and all the things that you hear in the world today. The mobile world probably hasn't gotten there yet, right? And so I think that that's going to be the next wave of making sure advertisers are comfortable with planning across mobile, right? A lot of the stuff has happened on the PC side, to the point that publishers might not adopt some of the requirements to take their inventory and make it more brand safe for advertisers. They're going to have to if they ultimately want to get the big dollars coming from TV. And so, a lot of the solutions are long tail based, right? Long and medium tail. Content is king, still remain king. Brand advertisers feel safe when they know that they're buying certain content or certain broadcasters. And then in the world of digital, where it's the medium and long tail, which is truly where the scale comes from, right? The tools have to be in place to continue to drive that safety. Mobile is the next wave that the technology will push, and solutions will be built to make advertisers more comfortable with that channel.
Yeah.
When you take out content as the factor, right, and the brand, the safe content, and you look across the long tail and the mid tail, it's technology that really provides the solutions for advertisers to become more safe with those channels.
Well, that brings me, Mike, to a question for you. Content is king, great. But we've seen online, particularly programmatic buying online, this transition toward buying audience. So is content still king, and is audience the emperor now? Because that's really what advertisers want. They want the audience, and they only buy content as a proxy for
Right.
the audience.
So the emperor rules the king?
Yes.
Is that the, yeah.
Just to
I mean-
push that analogy as far as we
Yeah, yeah.
possibly can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting, like, having cut my teeth in creating content specifically in the digital space, having worked for Microsoft and on MSN, we were creating content, but it was never lost on me, being steeped in the digital tradition, that audience was a big factor. We didn't want to create original content divorced from a plan that reached a specific demographic or psychographic. And I think what the online world proves to the rest of the media world is that you can do both, right? At IPG Media Brands, we're really pushing towards a model that says by 2018, 50% of our spend will be against programmatic, and the other 50%, will be the way we currently do business. Now, as a content person, should that frighten me? No, it actually gets me pretty fired up, because the idea is if you can reach an audience effectively and efficiently through the programmatic, it then frees you up. It frees up the people power to do the creative work needed to help brands truly break through. We don't need nobody here needs a lecture on fragmented media. But if you are then sort of using that as a base to then go after traditional content and work with them and augment that in unique ways that help benefit a brand, that's putting your people power against what's going to be most effective for brands. So the two in concert, we think are a great combination.
So, Jed, then taking that into consideration, how's that changed the way that the planning is done, and a lot of the work you're doing, bringing in a bunch of different data sets for your clients and helping them define that intersection of audience and content?
I think it changes a bunch of things, but I think there's clearly a lot of opportunities to automate some of those processes, and I think that when you talk about programmatic, to me, there's lots of aspects of it, and everyone defines it a little bit differently. There's the technology around it, there's the workflow, and then there's the inventory. And so the technology, it's like if you can automate a lot of this stuff, yeah, why wouldn't you in terms of doing that? The part to me that's the stickiest wicket is the inventory, because so much of that inventory, the most desirable inventory, my sense is it'll take a while for that to get out there into something like the programmatic channel. Now, your late night, your run of sight, your more broad day parts, that's one thing, but your prime time, your sort of best inventory, I feel like for some period of time, people are going to hold on to that and not want to put that into a programmatic channel. So it has a huge impact on how an agency plans and buys, but I think that, I was on a panel at the Coalition for Innovation in Media Measurement about the data-driven agency, and there was a gentleman from IPG, and I was from Omnicom, and there was someone from Group M, and there was someone from Starcom, and we all said the same thing, which is this is the direction it's moving in, which is the planning and buying is moving in a more data-driven way, and we're all using some variation of a DMP, where we ingest all data from lots of different sources, and then we can buy specific audiences more on the go. But a question you didn't ask, but I think is really relevant from a content point of view, is there's a lot of great content out there, but how do you aggregate that? And how do you, many of us went to the New Fronts a week or two ago, and there's great quality content that AOL's putting out, and Yahoo and Google and lots of other places. To me, a lot of that content, you can't really tell the difference between the quality of that content and the quality of content on what would have been a cable show or a network show in the past. And so the sort of quality is higher and much more equal. But how do you get people to see that content? And how do you aggregate, when you talked about audience being the emperor, they are the emperor, but how do you, Yahoo's got a series called Burning Love. It's funny, it's short. Whenever I show a clip of it to people to educate them about what the quality of content is online, people like it. But, how am I going to hear about Burning Love? Is he going to send me a tweet? Is he going to email me to check it out? How do you sort of, have a schedule or a destination where I'm going to go to AOL for this and I'm going to go to Yahoo for that? And I think that's the sort of next question is how you aggregate those eyeballs and you draw people to it.
And I think the interesting thing too, just building on that point is, it used to be, not so long ago, 4 years ago, that if you were going to see something that was of high production value online, it was because it was inspired from a brand. It was inspired from a brand attribute that a company wanted to exploit and bring to life in an elegant way, and they backed it with the funds to bring it to life. And that's how that stuff made it online. Now, it's like they're almost ramping up for programmatic. I mean, they can't get enough production companies. Every friend of mine who works for a production company, it is literally like Proposal Central, right? It is Proposal Central, and it is, across all of the bigs, AOL, YouTube, and the like. And it's like almost like they're just gearing up for it. The more quality we can have, the more we can seize the programmatic. And then it's sort of shifting to a brought to you by, insert brand here, rather than an inspired by, which, from my standpoint is good because it's more quality content out there. Gets challenging because the inspired by, especially when built from brands, is from research about consumers, research about people, research about an audience and an insight, that you can deliver something of value to them, brought to you on behalf of the brand. Now we're getting into a group of programmers are choosing shows that they think are interesting based on the pitch that they receive. So, it's where it's going. Hopefully we can just sort of keep pace and understand that these insights can actually net something of value. I just got on a soapbox, sorry about that.
Well, we've touched on a bunch of different topics. Any questions? Let me pause. Yeah.
I'm just curious, across all three of you, what either verticals or demos are you seeing the most money move away from traditional TV into digital? I mean, a lot of the content you've seen created in traditional YouTube, and I'm not talking about high quality production content, is more geared towards kids content or DIY. I'm just curious if you have any perspective where you see TV money first flow from TV to digital.
Let me just repeat the question for the recording here, that basically the question is, where's the money moving from traditional TV into particular demographics or particular verticals or wherever?
On our end, we're seeing obviously a lot in the auto industry. That seems to be a big, obviously spending vertical in general, but I think the ability to drive down to a more of a geo level for some tier 2 based budgets is a positive opportunity for the auto industry. So we're seeing a lot of tier 2 dollars coming online, and ultimately would be leveraging local broadcasts, which typically skews against an older demographic. So recognizing that they can find a younger demographic online that otherwise they can't get in the traditional TV sense. So that's one area. And also many brands that are really trying to hit that 18 to 34-year-old marketplace, they're recognizing that TV in today's world, given that it is fragmented and that a lot of the viewing habits are changing amongst a younger demographic, they really are utilizing their PCs and tablets and over-the-top systems like the Rokus and PS3s, that they want to find that audience and therefore taking budget from TV to find them on digital. So, and that's across the board in most of the verticals, but auto and CPG are really the key ones that we're seeing the largest shift from today in our market.
For us, I'd say just that it really depends by client. I mean, some clients are more eager to be out there, and it's not innovative today in 2014, but to be more, in that cutting edge in terms of moving more of their dollars into online video, and others are very conservative, and for a host of reasons why they are on the more conservative side. It's definitely a younger demo phenomenon. I think younger demos still enjoy watching large screens and large entertainment. So I don't think, just because people talk about 18 to 24, 18 to 34-year-olds liking, consuming video on the go and consuming video on tablets, that's certainly true. But I think they also do enjoy the big screen experience. I think everybody does. When I worked at Nielsen for a number of years, we used to talk about the consumers liking the best screen available. And if you have the ability to watch whatever it is on a big screen versus on a small screen, you generally take that. And so I think some of that goes into play in terms of how you decide how to do it. The other piece is the light TV consumer, and that person who's not watching a lot of TV. Generally speaking, you try to find them on mobile or online because they may be consuming media in a different fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally thinking through auto and CPG, and then I was going to be unique and say it kind of, it depends on client. And so here I am at the end.
Still out of the water.
Yeah, but I also think too. I mean, you look at and I see more of them than I ever thought I would. The reach and frequency curves now, and I don't totally, but I almost geek out on this stuff from the standpoint that it's like, okay, here are 3 networks. Now knock it to 2 and add cable prime. Right? Now add programmatic, which gets to the light TV viewer, and suddenly you've gone, in one spreadsheet from a 50% reach of your target audience to 76%, right? And I'm like, oh, that's freaking awesome, right? Now find the cool stuff that I can work on within that. But so I think too, it's the right vertical, it's the right mindset, and putting forth. The facts that says, look, we're going to reach more people, and if our end goal is to move products for you, this is the most expedient route.
Yeah, and I'd also say that a lot of the advertisers today across all the verticals are trying to understand what the value is of a cross-channel user, someone who they've reached on TV and then on digital, and the value that provides. Because it is more measurable. We can see actions and activity and intent that takes place from somebody who's been exposed on TV and on digital. So it does go back to the mindset of an advertiser who's willing to recognize that they have to start going there more and leaning into it, and probably about the relationships that advertiser has with their agency, how aggressive the agency is in terms of, so there's lots of variables that will drive an advertiser's decision to run on digital and to shift dollars. But they're all talking about it. They're all going there. It's just a matter of how quickly and making sure that they're comfortable with the brand safety behind it, and understanding how their ads are being ran and audiences are reaching and the measurability behind it.
Do you think this is a phenomenon that has an effect? We already have the new upfronts going on. Is this something that eats out if the TV upfront growth this year? Is it next year? And when I think about eats out, is it 100 basis basis points, 200 bit, longer term I get the trend, but when do you start to actually see the tipping point?
So the follow-up question here is, when do we start seeing the dollars large enough that it actually starts to impact the amount of money transacted at the TV upfronts?
I think there's been some charts showing that some of the dollars are coming for digital video coming from other mediums. You know, so that's kind of where the budgets are coming from today, whether it be from display or print or whatever it might be, out of home. But we are seeing that the TV buyers are now focusing on the digital side of the business. In the past, it was just digital buyers. I think the tipping point has already started, right? How quickly it shifts and the amount of dollars, that's to be determined, but certainly the TV buyers, and what we're seeing, working with the agencies and advertisers, is that TV buyers are very interested to understand how digital is a complementary buy to their TV buy. And how they can work better and understand the outcomes that exist cross-channel. Or somebody who's only reached on TV versus somebody who's only reached on digital. You know, measurement is going to drive a lot of the final decisions on how this is being done.
Well, I think it's fascinating too. We've made the shift to having an investment team that is a holistic team, right? And it's not unique, right? It's sort of the intent isn't unique. Actually doing it can be challenging. I think the fascinating thing to me is, we all sort of, grew up in silos, right? Like I was a digital guy for a long time, and now I'm, sort of holistic media now. And the folks that we're hiring in, right? You talk about that 18 to 34 demo, the millennial group. They don't want to live in a broadcast silo. They don't want to live in a digital silo. They want to see it all. They've grown up with it all, and they understand how it all works, right? Back in the late 90s, we were fighting for digital's right at the table, right? Come on, man. They weren't a part of that argument.
That was just display.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's not their argument. They're not holding on to it, right? And so it's actually getting easier just by the multi-use of technology and the understanding of it that I think is, for me, super heartening, that I think we're going to get there.
I'm going to echo one thing that you said, which is it's hard. That that move where we have the integrated buying approach, and yeah, the millennials think it's all just one thing, but the rules and the business rules around traditional and around digital video are different. And it's funny to see them all in a room and have two totally different takeaways from a presentation, an insights presentation, a vendor presentation. It's really a little bit of Mars and Venus there. But over time, people will just start to think of it as video, and I think that will happen. But in response to the upfront question, I'm going to paraphrase Jack Myers, which is basically, there's been a whole lot of change and a whole lot of discussion, but nothing's going to change this upfront. It was something he had a catchier headline because that's what he does for a living. But Jack Myers, writes about the media business, and basically, I think there's been a lot of discussion around that. But I think there's, it will happen incrementally over time. But is that tipping point this upfront? My personal opinion is I don't think so, but are more accounts testing and learning and trying and dipping their foot in the water? Absolutely, and I think over time you'll see that tipping point happen. And I think it's already happening in terms of the way we're organized as agencies, the way the publishers are organized. They came from a Turner upfront this morning, and the big announcement on stage is we have one sales team, right? We don't have a video team and we don't have a TV team. It's one sales team. 2014, you have one sales team. I wouldn't think that would be lead-off news, but it was lead-off news that, maybe before they had, you were the head of digital and you were the head of traditional, and now you're together and you're one, But that was one of the announcements today. And just as a student of the upfronts, to see how each network and holding company talks about digital is fascinating, because I've been amazed at how little it's come up in several of them.
Last year's theme was TV's back.
Yeah, and last year was TV's back. This year, ABC had some discussion around VOD views, and we got some mobile, people through Watch ABC, their app, but a couple of them were mute on it. They just weren't even talking about it. And I was like, I'm surprised, because those shows, whether it's an NBC show or whoever, they're being watched on VOD, or they're being watched through computers and through tablets. So I was surprised, but it was definitely less apparent from those discussions, all the shift that's happening from a
I also
consumer
think,
point of
to
view.
your point, the best screen available is such a great line, right? Because if I have a show that I love, and I would prefer to watch it on TV,
Yeah.
but I'm flying from New York to LA, I'm going to download that puppy. I'm
Right.
going to bring it with me, and it's going to be on my Kindle, because we work with Amazon, and we love Kindle.
I love
So-
Fire TV, by the way. I bought one.
Right?
It's great.
Awesome.
Great device.
Yeah, and Gary Busey, come on, right? Nothing better. So I just think it's fascinating. It's like, it's almost like maybe, I'm sure this wasn't the reason, but maybe it's not being brought up because it shouldn't matter. It just shouldn't matter. It's good. We all are multi-screen creatures now.
Well, the one thing I wanted to follow up that I think, Alec, you said before is that some of this money is coming not necessarily from TV, but from print or from display or something. So what does that say about our topic here? How do you master the spend between television, I'll just call it digital? What does that say about what role digital video plays relative to TV that it's, first coming out of these other budgets?
Well, I think that it was the fact that digital was the mindset of the internet kind of broke apart the telephone directories because of search, and then it broke apart the print industry and the newspaper industry because of all the content. And so it's just where budgets originatally flowed from offline to online were those mediums, and now some of that budget's still being extracted out of those mediums and it's being put into digital video. It's just a shift of where the eyeballs are and how, and so I think that's really the mentality still that sits in that area and why it's coming from that. However, that said, we're also seeing, again, the TV buyers recognizing that, and to say it is a TV spend that's been shifted digital, it might be just the fact that it's a video spend. It's a person who's buying video, and digital is just part of the TV buy, right? And it's that same mentality. Maybe it wasn't addressed because it's like, yeah, it makes sense. If you're going to buy Bravo, and the Housewives, you're going to get them on TV and you're going to get them on tablet. My wife watches on the tablet, right? She watches it on the TV too, and then I sit and watch on the tablet, my own thing, because somehow I know that show's always up on the screen with my wife. But
Though, Mike, it also sounded from you're geeking out on the reach frequency curves that at least today, TVs, even though the ratings are single digits, for even hit shows, that's still bigger than anything else.
yeah,
So that's still kind of the bedrock of your plan.
yep.
And when you start to max out your reach frequency curve there, you got to put other stuff in.
Right.
And now the advantage is you can put more video in, not have to go to print or radio or anything else.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, the idea of then programmatic, sort of lacing in that like TV viewer, they're still watching. They watch sports at a higher index, and they watch television specials at a higher index.
Which is why all the upfronts you heard about events, and all the events that you can have.
so the light viewers, that's what they're watching.
Yeah.
Is event-based.
Yeah, well, but events, whether it be the Emmys or the Grammys or the Super Bowl.
It's water
those-
cooler.
Yeah, it's water cooler. It's a unique event. It's something unique that you're going to go in and talk about. You're not going to DVR it.
Yeah.
And there is, you see more and more attention paid to what kinds of new shows can we put on that people will want to tune in for because, hey, I want to go see Pitbull open up New Year's. I'm sick of Ryan Seacrest, and this is Fox's pitch. I'm not a shill for Fox. But Fox's pitch is, hey, you got Ryan Seacrest, we're going to do Pitbull on New Year's Eve. We're going to put it in Miami.
We've
And-
had very good results partnering with Ryan Seacrest, so we're just as a panel collectively covering our bases.
I want to jump to the back of the room for a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether if we have some basic macro data maybe which can help us understand much better of this conversation. I think that there are two. Number one, we all know there are more screens at home, which means more, add them together, maybe the screen time, you watch more TV or video, whatever device it is. So my first question is that is the overall, whether you have two class TV or digital video, the overall ad revenue, is that growing? In what percentage? That's one question.
Right.
Secondly, come to these two divisions. What's the percentage on TV versus digital? And is that are we 50-50 or 60 or TV 60-40? And what's the annual change rate? I'm wondering anybody can share these two best questions.
So, yeah, let me just repeat the question for the recording here. First, the question is, with all of these screens and all the different video watched on these different types of screens, is overall time spent with video going up? And then the second question then is the revenue split. How much of that revenue is traditional TV versus some of the digital choices? Alec, you probably
Well,
have
I mean,
a
what I've
bird's eye
seen
view
with
of
some
that.
recent, like eMarketer and Nielsen's come out with some recent studies showing that content consumption overall has increased. The amount of hours being spent consuming content, and I don't know if it's just video or content in general, has increased, and it's a lot. TV viewership has declined a very small amount in 2013.
Very small amount.
Yeah, very small.
TV viewership is still at all-time highs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the TV is not going away.
It's not.
You may be adding other screens to it. I'm sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
but the question you didn't ask, which I was thinking of as you were talking, was attentiveness, right? Which is you've got all these screens and you can measure most of those screens because you can put a little pixel on most of those ads or that content to measure it. But the thing that we're trying to understand is attentiveness, meaning, people are watching the big screen video and then they have their phone or they have their tablet, and when the commercial comes on, what are they doing?
Right.
And so there's all sorts of new ways that you can measure attentiveness. There's biometrics, there's observational research that you can do. But to me, that's really understanding. You have all these screens, people are inundated with screen time. But how do you cut through that clutter and either create a message that, the creative, Gary Busey, that they're going to remember, or is it, some other factor that's going to get them to say, oh, I'll give you my best example is the Blacklist, which is on NBC. I watch it on a DVR, and they had one of the actors from the Blacklist, Tom Kane. I don't know his real name, but Tom Kane is one of the his name in the program. He introduced a spot for the Mustang, and I stopped to watch it because it was him. It was the actor, and he did the first 5 or 10 seconds, and then he said, "Oh, blah blah blah. Here's why I'm driving the Mustang." That's product placement. That's good old-fashioned sponsorship / product placement. But it was effective because, wow, I have an affinity for the show and for the actor, so I want to hear what he has to say. And so I think there's more and more of that stuff where you can still cut through on the message, and no matter how many screens you have, if the creative is good, people enjoy ads. I mean, the ads get a really bad name, but good ads people enjoy, and they'll talk about them, and as much as they'll talk about the content.
Yeah, and I think too that got a couple of things swirling. Stats, it's a great time to be in media because it's that people are spending they're spending way more time in media today than with anything else, right? It's like, and I don't have it exactly, but it's about a work week, right? An old work week, like 40 hours a week, right? So I mean, it's crazy. You think about it; it's like a second job. But it's not that it's all cumulative time stacked, but it is. It's the multi-screens, and I think we flirted a lot with how do they play together. I'm watching the Blacklist. I will download an app on my iPad, and I will do this, and I will do. It's how are people actually doing that in the real world beyond marketing scenarios that we dream up? And I think, too, the promise of programmatic and freeing yourself up to do something like the example that you called out for a competitor to Hyundai and Kia, who we also work with. We're doing big integrations on the voice. It becomes interesting, right? Because if you think about it in the zapping mentality or capturing attention, it's not enough to do a stunt anymore. Right? We're freeing up time to actually do things that will get somebody who's about to zap to the Yankees game to go, hey, wait, what's that? Right? I love this show. The brand knows I love that show, and I'm, in the target audience for a Mustang. Let's all three get together and do something really cool just to get people to stop, lean forward a little bit, and then create an impression.
Back of the room.
Transition from TV to TV everywhere, the spend between digital TV and digital video. Do you guys have any ideas on how much leverage content providers have in being able to market the ability to now take their content to more screens, and does that result in their ability to charge a higher premium, perhaps, for the TV everywhere screen, or is that just normal? It's all clutched together. How is that working?
Great. Again, let me repeat the question. So the question is, how does this affect the level of power that the content owners have in distributing this content across these different screens, and does that give them more pricing power or less?
Well, I believe Nielsen's coming out with their digital ratings now, right? And so it's all about the ability for those content providers to be able to show that the actual ratings are there for the value of the digital piece to be worth something. And I don't come from the content side, so I'm sure you guys, but that's one area that we would see in terms of content. Specifically on the automated side and the mid-tail and the long tail, it is about using OCR as an example to say, I delivered this many impressions against this targeted demographic, here was the frequency, and then all the other things that come along with it. So the digital side is measurable specifically, but when you talk about content providers, it has to fall under the same currency that they're doing business with today.
I would just say that I think the content folks have some power. We talked about content being king and whatnot, so I think they have some power, but I think the creative way to do it is to have these creative integrations where, yeah, they have some skin in the game, but the advertiser does as well. And as you were saying, they know their audience. They're going to do something creative that's going to catch people's attention, and then the agency is going to be involved because you do content creation. We have a content creation arm of Omnicom Media Group where that's what we do, which is we create content. Some people call it native advertising. Some people call it real-time content development. There's this real desire for content, and it might be a brand message. It might be just some of the actors from a show. There's lots of different content that's created in that ecosystem, but it's all advancing the media business, which is, hey, we're trying to reach someone to sell something, and I want to sell them a candy bar. I want to sell them a CPG product, and so everyone benefits when we're all working together to sort of get that consumer's attention, measure it, and then send them that message.
I think too, just to address the prices question, prices going up, it depends on the scale of the audience, right? If it's a TV show and the majority of eyeballs are there, you can do whatever you want for us from a digital standpoint, but if you're only reaching 100 people, you don't win that negotiation. But I think if you think of it cumulatively in a way where everybody wins, it just becomes, all right, just add the 100 to the current 2 million you reach and call it, 2,100,000.
Right, not 2.1, but close.
I should use 100,000. So, I think, audience is emperor maybe. Certainly emperor when it comes to figuring out costs and how much somebody can charge a premium for.
Actually, let me combine that with, Jed, your comment about attentiveness. This is one of my pet theories, and I don't know if you'd agree with me or if you've seen any evidence of this, but it seems to me if someone watches something either digitally, so they've got to go through their TV Everywhere app or go to the Networks app, or even on the cable VOD tier, you've got to go through the program guide. You are very consciously pursuing a particular program you want to watch right now, versus your channel surfing and then you stop on something that looks the least boring. Is there any higher value of that kind of attentiveness, and has that been priced in anywhere that you've seen yet?
I think some of that may be priced in. I think there is a value to that, but there is a value to this channel surfing too, because you might discover something you trip upon something and then you end up watching it for 30 minutes or 2 hours, and that sometimes doesn't happen in the digital environment. I think the digital environment, the attentiveness is generally higher, but that doesn't mean they're not still doing multiple things, right? Because you could be watching a program on NBC on your computer, but then the ad comes on. My guess is you're probably opening a different tab and doing something else while that ad is going on. And depending on how that's being measured, you may or not be counted in that in terms of a viewer, but their tolerance for all ads it depends.
Great, yeah, go for it.
Think about relative pricing. So two things. One, in the purely digital sense, moving TV money to the new fronts. And then in the TV Everywhere example, I think the example you're referencing there is on live. When you go with dynamic ad insertion, how are you thinking about the relative pricing between broadcast and dynamically inserted ads? Because it seems like in the past, when it was first rolled out, a lot of that inventory was used for make-ins on a kind of at parity with traditional broadcasts. And then the question before, it seems like now that it's more targeted, it should be higher CPMs, but you have to reset the model
right?
It's-
So
to-
that
to-
question is the relative pricing between the digital and broadcast, and then as dynamic ad insertion comes along, is that another
What's-
But then also
premium
for
pricing option?
online as well, it seems like a lot of the criticism has been the pricing's way too high for a lot of the highest quality.
The pricing is way
online
too high.
stuff. Are we,
The pricing is way too high for the online stuff.
And that's opened the door. That's opened the door up for the short form content, right?
Yeah.
And some other targeting capabilities because the FEP inventory is priced high.
what do you think the relative pricing is?
Well, I'm not going to, your earlier part of the question is that most of the networks have employed a fluidity model, which is, from a traditional point of view, if you're spending $1 or whatever the number is on Fox, whether they give you the ad on Fox or on Fox.com or through Fox, on demand, it's an impression and they're going to measure it the same way and calculate it the same way. So that part's been worked really well. What you were talking about is now that they can do dynamic ads, what happens there? I think it's too early to tell because Fox is just in the process of rolling that out. CBS has made a big push on that. I believe the other big network is Turner that's announced that they're doing a lot with video on demand and dynamic ad insertion. So I think we got to wait and see how that kind of plays out. What's the demand there for that? I think Jim and I were sort of talking at lunch that the numbers of people that are actually going to go past 4 days, adding up those numbers could be small. And how are you going to come up with a model for that in terms of how to pay for that? And to me that's sort of a transactional model, which is okay, they're watching the show 5 to 10 days later or whatnot. How do you come up with a model for that? I think it's really early days for that. But so far, the online video piece, they have been able to command premiums, and I'm not sure how sustainable that is.
Yeah, I mean, we're not seeing, obviously, the broadcasters on the digital side, they don't even really allow for any level of targeting, right? I mean, you get the impression that you get as like a sponsorship buy. And so, but there's still value, again, going back to that content is king and brand safety, and they know where they're placing their ads. But then that leaves the other side of it, which is the programmatic side of it, which is aggregating all this other content and then layering over all these great data sets that make it very attractive for advertisers to say, I'm okay with the fact that I'm not going to be on this branded content, right, on this, because I know that I'm being more efficient in how I'm reaching a certain audience. So the efficiency play is what is driving the dollars to go beyond the broadcasters and into the networks, right? VOD, ultimately, we would see it as very similar to potentially aggregating a lot of long tail, even though it is content, branded content, and then data will be the driver of VOD because that's what it allows for when you start thinking about how it's almost an IP-based delivery. It's very similar to digital as it is today.
Let me follow on that because that's my one of my interests in, again, thinking about the role of this digital stuff vis-a-vis the traditional linear primetime stuff. And the hypothesis here is that, okay, you're still going to use your primetime as your core. In the upfront, you're going to have to buy some run-of-schedule stuff in, late night or prime access or all these other day parts that are, much lower value. Does programmatic allow the publishers, to layer on some of this intelligence and charge a premium for it, but
If they want to.
But
Right,
because-
ultimately, I mean, I think what's Marissa Meyer say, what's her quote was, the opposite of programmatic is manual, not premium, right? So premium is just how the broadcasters and the content is received. It doesn't mean that ultimately premium couldn't be delivered in a programmatic fashion, right, in the automated fashion. And if broadcasters decide that they want to start layering data over to it, to whether it create greater efficiencies, and continue to battle for the pricing that they're charging for today, or recognize that some value of the consumer might be worth something to one advertiser versus another advertiser, they could start taking advantage of it. They're not there yet. They don't need to be, right? But maybe one day they will have to be, but currently they don't need to be.
And Alec, what was the manual piece of that?
It was programmatic. The opposite of programmatic is manual, not
Right.
premium.
Got it.
Right.
Meaning the way things that we're doing it today.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
any other questions out there? Okay.
We have
One more.
That's another one.
right in the
Oh,
front
sure,
row.
go for
This
it.
guy's right in the front row.
So you talked about taking money away from print directories. If we look look at radio, out of home, other traditional media, where do you think digital eats into that, aside from TV, where do you think digital eats into that share? What is kind of the next newspapers in your mind?
So what is the next,
The next most susceptible traditional
Okay.
ad medium that
Okay.
digital will go after, aside from those that have already been hit very hard. So the two obvious ones I would think of are out of home and radio. Just
So,
curious
yeah.
to get your thoughts on
Well,
those.
radio already has probably been hit relatively hard from it.
Has been hit, but
Yeah.
stabilized some.
Stabilizing, it seems now, because of digital radio, that they are capable of now doing things that they otherwise couldn't do 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So they may be able to track new dollars that they otherwise weren't getting before.
I think the same's true for outdoor, though. I mean, you know, we have a group that does only focus on is outdoor, and some of the stuff they do is amazing. I mean, it's, you know, everything from pop-up shops for brands to immersive sort of experiences and everything that's going on with digital, you know, billboards and digital boards all over town. I mean, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that these guys sell me, but I think there's a lot of really neat new things you can do with outdoor. And I think radio for a lot of people is still a companion and is still a nice way to reach a lot of people and drive automotive sales and retail sales. I mean, you look at the loyalty that people have towards their different, you know, a lot of it's drive time, right? Drive time both in the morning and the afternoon, but there's a lot of people that, you know, are very loyal audiences for those things that are consumers of products and stuff, so.
Could be direct mail, maybe. I mean, I think direct mail
Yeah.
was hurt, but not as much as the other channels. That could be an area that we could potentially see it come from.
My mailbox is still full.
Right,
Still
yeah.
full, it is.
And
It's amazing. It's
actually,
amazing that it is.
The counter to that also, though, is that there's web-only properties that are adding catalogs
Yeah.
because they're seeing higher sales
yeah.
when they add a catalog and they show you a glossy thing. And my 9-year-old loves getting the catalogs, both my wife's catalogs and the catalogs aimed at her, because she spends a lot of time
Yeah.
looking at them. I mean, she spends a ton of time on YouTube, but she's also flipping through all the different catalogs that come in. So.
let me ask the companion question to that, is since a lot of the money now seems to be coming out of non-TV media, what is the most susceptible component of the television budget? Is it spot? Is it cable? Is it scatter budgets?
I would probably say all of the above. I mean,
Take the easy way out.
Yeah, it seems like it's
Well, I mean, it's going to be, I think it's going to be just sort of shaved off everything. It's not going to be just, okay, screw it, no more scatter. We're out, you're out. And we're going to rip and replace. It's just in increments, you know? I even, like, to your question about radio, it's no longer radio, it's audio. It's the same thing we're doing, talking about video. It's the same discussion for audio, right? Radio's not that. Radio's exciting as heck. Spotify, SoundCloud, like all the people that are innovating in that space, it's just another outlet. And, you know, are they eating into then traditional radio as we know it? Maybe, but it's the same thing. It's just new people are coming up and scraping a little bit. So I wouldn't say rip and replace, it's just a little bit
The thing that I
off
would
beach.
point out.
where maybe the law, in this case, the law of diminishing return takes effect. At what point do you
didn't really
you
talk
move
about
budgets
that.
around
So
because you've tapped
Salesforce
out what you can do
and,
potentially in any given channel
hosted search,
because
for
of
example.
GRPs and ratings have gone down in some
Those
in
APIs
traditional
we
sense.
found don't
Even though it's shifting to
always
digital, how do
stay
you
consistent.
take the same dollars and just make it work
There
differently?
we were using a CRM.
So we're coming
that,
at the end of our time.
had a great
My wrap-up
integration with
question, Jed,
LinkedIn,
you and I talked a little bit
and
about this at
LinkedIn
lunch.
just decided to do
These kinds of things have been talked about for 10 or 15 years in the
So
TV
never
business.
do an integration.
Nothing
between
happened
any of these
for a long time.
service
Things are starting to
services.
happen, and as we said, it's still early
You gotta be
days.
worried
and
they're
This year,
worried
we're
about
not
their
going to see a
terms of service.
big change. Is it going to take another 10 years for this to
Cool
fully
integration with something else,
play out, or
then
do
all
you
of a sudden
think
you
it'll happen faster?
So you're stuck clearing the bag.
You each get 30 seconds. Mike.
7.5 years.
All right. You heard it here first, folks.
I think it's going to happen faster than 10 years. It's not like interactive advertising and addressable advertising. This is happening now. Lots of clients are testing and learning and getting their sort of arms and feet around what to do with this stuff. And so I don't know exactly where the tipping point is. If I would, I'd invest in all those companies and I wouldn't have to sit on stage here with you guys. But I think it's over the next several years, 3 to 5 years.
I would agree. I would say in the next 3 to 5 years, given how consumers constantly are changing their they have changed their consumption habits. It just depends on, as that audience continues to be the buying audience, and then it's just going to happen more. And the younger audiences that are coming into market, they are even more adept to using the devices over. I understand bigger is better, and they like it, but still, this is just how they're growing up.
And as the younger audiences enter into the workforce and choose media and media research as a profession, then it all works in concert.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. Great. Let's thank our panel here. Thanks, guys. That was great.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your questions. Great questions.